So I guess we've talked in the past in most weeks about the problem itself, but I've always thought the real problem is not the problem in the moment. The problem is actually no one's aware of the problem. So this kind of awareness thing is almost the starting point of the whole thing. And until the awareness thing's solved, you can't solve the next part of the equation, which is fixing the estate planning gap in people's lives. So why do you think there's just this complete lack of awareness about the problem and the fact that people need this?
Quite frankly, I think that it is a lack of just education overall regarding estate planning, regarding financial planning. Most folks think that if you only have an asset or two, it's really not a big deal. And that their family, I've literally had people say, my family will figure it out. I don't care. I don't care if my house ends up in probate. Now, mind you, this was a person without kids. So I'm guessing that if she were to have some kids, she may feel differently. But she was like, my dad will take care of it, or my brother will take care of it. And I'm like, okay, but that's like a really kind of selfish way to be thinking. And instead of like wanting to learn more or inquire more about like, what do you mean? What is probate? Or why am I putting my family at a disadvantage if my death occurs early? And so it's a lack of knowledge, number one, but also it's fear itself, right? The number one fear with humans is public speaking, and then the second is death. So if you think about the fact that, hey, we need to sit down and discuss your will, your trust, your living trust, your medical directive, your final wishes, that's the one that people get hung up on the most, the final wishes. It just really freaks them out to think, do I want buried or do I want a cremation? By the way, where do I want to be buried, or where do I want my ashes to go? Most folks just are very uncomfortable talking about these things, and so they actually shut down before they are open to receiving education. And the younger you are, the less responsibilities you have. So generally, younger folks, people without kids, they just don't, they won't entertain. They're not even open. And then as you get married, as you have more responsibilities, as you have a family to take care of, you become way more open to those things. But I think once you have kids, and I can say this as a woman, we become so heightened to death, like awareness of danger, because it's in our nature to protect our kids and to always be thinking through, well, what is the worst case scenario and how do I work backwards to protect them from that? Well, in this situation, the worst case scenario is that you continue to remain ignorant to the situation. You continue to refuse to educate yourself on what a healthy estate is and what you need to do to protect your family. And that even if you just have a will, there's still a problem. There's still a massive gap in between what you have done and what you need to do to protect your family. So first and foremost, fear is generally driving the boat or the bus for people. And then just really a lack of knowledge, a lack of people like me out here educating my fellow family members, my fellow community on why this is a problem, ringing the bell, waving the flag, and saying, if you do not address this, you are putting your family at potential risk for foreclosed house, no access to funds, already dealing with the trauma of losing you and processing all of that, perhaps parenting, going from a 2-parent household to a single-parent household because they're now a widow. These are things that people don't always understand, that by not taking your house and funding it to a living trust, you are putting your family in jeopardy of homelessness, potential homelessness, depending on the circumstances. But here we are speaking on worst case scenario. If the house is tied up in one human's name, or maybe both parents or both homeowners pass away at the same time, God forbid, whomever has to now take on the responsibility of the kids, getting the house settled, whatever they need to do, everything's stuck in those human names. And those human names are now wherever they go after we leave here, right? So these people have a mountain of administrative work that they have to deal with, on top of dealing with the emotional toll on from losing you, on top of potentially going from like caring for no kids to however many kids you have. So if my husband and I pass at the same time, the party that we've elected to step in for us would go from no kids to 3 kids overnight. That in itself is alarming and tense. So think about the lack of planning that you are putting somebody in when you're asking for them to step in and take care of your circumstances. Those emotional pieces in themselves are a mountain to climb. And then you throw an administrative.
But it's kind of a straightforward fact. If you don't organize it, if you don't organize it yourself, it's going to get organized for you. And when it gets organized for you, it's going to be done in a suboptimal way at the worst possible time.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And mind you, I part of the reason I like found myself creating Legacy Lighthouse and really emphasizing on estate plan is because I have been working with the families who didn't have the right party to support and getting their trust in place. Whether maybe they had a trust, but they left vital assets out, or they just didn't do anything at all. They just died without a will, without a living trust, without any sort of documentation in place. And so I've been helping these families through probate. And not only am I helping them in an administrative capacity, but I'm also being a light for them through a very dark and painful and emotional time for them. And when you don't have somebody like me or a trusted attorney to support you through this situation, it is completely overwhelming. It is financially burdensome. A lot of people can't afford to even work with an attorney on these probates. They want $5,000-$10,000 down just to take the case. And you could be looking
Yeah.
at, depending on how much the asset is worth, depending on how much the estate is worth, you could be looking at 20, 40, $100,000 in just legal and court
Mhm.
costs that should be going to your family, you know?
So going back to the kind of core basics, the issue is partly around awareness of the problem in the first place. How do you actually make people aware that there's this problem they need to address? I mean, do you think it's the people who've got their head buried in the sand around, their general financial commitments and their general kind of financial planning also have this problem, or is this people who they may have their financials all their sort of savings fantastically anchored down, be very good at that, but just ignoring this one problem, or do you see it bundled together?
I think that it's a combination of both things. It's not uncommon for somebody to have a net worth of 1, 2, 3, $5 million, even $18 million. I've ran into cases where they just left everything out of the trust. That case has been being probated for a couple of years now, and it's still dragging on, and now it's in multiple jurisdictions. So I think it's a combination of both. I also find that, $1 million isn't what it used to be, right? So as the money, as the value of the dollar continues to rapidly change, $1 million becomes less and less and less. So people think, oh, I just own a house, or oh, I just have this E-Trade account or whatever, and they think it's really not a big deal. Most folks also are under the preconceived notion that a living trust is for the rich folks. I mean, the reality is $100,000 is not much these days either. And if you hit that threshold, or let's say when, because a lot of folks are going to hit that threshold. When you hit that threshold, it's vital that you ensure that everything that you've worked so hard for is properly protected, properly funded to an entity that you can control, right? The goal is to die with nothing, leaving everything that you own over here in this entity that we're calling a living trust. That way, whomever is elected, either the co-trustee next to you, if you're doing a couple's trust, or a successor trustee in a case where it's an individual, those people will immediately be able to step in and pick up where you left off, run a business, pay a mortgage, sell the house, anything that they need to do, that power and that living trust goes from you directly to them. You just have to put a document in place that says this party passed or whatever happened. I'm serving as a successor trustee and stepping into the trustee role. So I kind of got off on a tangent. Sorry.
Yeah. You know, but the question, obviously, the whole purpose of what you're doing around, obviously your service is to sort of do this education piece. But who should be doing the education and making people aware at the right age, or even before the right age, or before the right trigger points? Who should be educating them that this is something that needs to be in your plans to consider and actually act
Quite,
on, or should it just be
I,
with your driving license?
I think it should be part of the public school system, quite frankly. But so should some other things like taxes and credit and things. But I guess there just has to be more people like me out here willing to support families and educate them. I'm the type of person where if I see a huge problem and a family, like when I see these families and I know that they're unprotected, I just look at them like walking time bombs. Like in my head, that's like what I see. And I'm like, let me help you put this out. Like, let's call in the bomb squad. Let's get this extinguished. And then everybody can move on protected. And then that way, when tragedy strikes, because the reality is we don't have happiness without sadness, right? There's a yin and a yang to everything. So when tragedy strikes, your wife or your husband or your partner is going to have the legal authority to advocate for you medically. They're going to have the legal authority with that power of attorney that has springing powers to act on your behalf in any which way that they need to. They know what your final wishes are. They know how to advocate for you if you find yourself incapacitated and possibly not coming back to full, back to your full capacity. Or so your partner will have those legal authorities, which are very important, very necessary, not only from a legal standpoint, but from a personal perspective and from the perspective of intimacy with your partner into IC, right? So part of seeing into your partner surrounding estate plans is knowing what they would want when this happens. Oftentimes couples are people are too afraid to have these conversations. And so neither partner is actually aware of what the other one would want. And then they're stuck unable to make these decisions anyways because the legal authority isn't there. And so the hospital's going to do whatever the heck they want.
But if you go back to the beginning of this whole point, it feels like, if the schools aren't going to do it, I accept how difficult it is for schools to talk about, non-curricular activities. But if the schools aren't going to do it, it doesn't really get discussed over the dinner table at home. It feels to me like the trigger points are: you get your first driving license, you deal with your first CPA. It's almost like when your CPA or your first lawyer, your family lawyer should be saying, like, do you have this in place? The CPA saying, do you have this in place? So you can only do so much evangelizing, but it almost feels like every professional who touches financial or legal matters should be starting. This is one of their key questions: do you have this in place? I know we're here to discuss, buying a property, but do you have this in place? I know we're here to discuss your taxes, but do you have this in place? That feels like the kind of like they should have this as part of their conversation, just as a transaction.
Yeah, business formation, that conversation should be happening. Purchasing a home, that conversation should be happening. Hiring your first CPA, that conversation should be happening. I mean, the lack of awareness spreads out through every single professional industry. If you think about it, legal to finance to business ownership and business management, corporate. I mean, specifically here, we have a huge opportunity to protect a lot of families by covering these gaps that we've been talking about. Like, most folks really don't understand what a gap they do have in their benefits. And I think personally, part of your benefits are to protect your family, right? You have businesses, corporations that provide health insurance, provide life insurance, provide legal services at a discounted rate. Why aren't they supporting and giving their families the ultimate protection through the number one thing that's going to happen to all of us, right? We're all going to
Yeah,
die. And our statistics show that there's a large number of women and men that will pass in their working years. I think it was like 20% of men and 12% of women, I believe was the study or the facts. So this is just a huge awareness all around, and there's just a level of ignorance I don't want to say ignorance. There's a level of uneducation, of a lack of education for everybody in multiple industries. So
yeah, but it's also just, it's responsibilities. To me, there's lack of awareness, but it's also the responsibility for people to start spreading the word. Because at the end of the day, it's in the CPA's interest to deal with these problems up front. If you're investing in new business, as you're a venture capitalist, put money into investing in the business, but do the team have this kind of coverage? Because that could, ruin the investment. It feels like there's so many professionals that are touching people day in, day out. This should be a very kind of key trigger question. And it's not kind of like we caught you out kind of question. It's like something like, we're only going to invest in you if you've got this. We're only going to, as a CPA, my advice is you need to have this. We'll throw it into the package, because this shouldn't be like should be pretty straightforward to address.
well, yes, but what I will also say is that when you're a CPA, you focus on CPA things, right? Like, this is my niche, this is my profession, this is where I'm an expert. So these people, these tax providers, these CPAs, they should have different referral networks for businesses like mine or other serious estate planning professionals, because the documentation isn't simple. You have to know what you're doing in order to make sure that you're properly protecting the families, which is kind of where my niche comes in, where I'm an expert in protecting families to make sure that the tax clauses get in there appropriately, right? So I've seen families lose 33% of taxes on capital gains because they didn't have a living trust. That's absolutely insane. Why would you just give 33% to the IRS? That makes no sense if you can protect yourself from it, right? So I understand why CPAs aren't also offering estate plans, because eventually one will take over the other. But everybody should have the right network to refer their people to trusted professionals that they know will take great care of their clients. The other industry that's really missing the mark on this is real estate agents. Like, it goes hand in hand, purchasing a real property asset, living trust. So I think that there has to be more networking, professional, trusted networking. And then also there's another gap that I want to point out. The people that can afford an attorney will go work with an attorney, right? So, but the average person on a California salary isn't going to be able to afford $300 to $500, $600 an hour for an attorney to address this. I've got a business owner in South Dakota that I'm working with, and she told me that the quote that she got from two separate attorneys was over $10,000 each because of the nature of her estate, commercial building, real property, two businesses. So the people that can afford the $10,000 trust are going to go do that. But then there's this gap of the normal everyday citizen who is walking around like that ticking time bomb, but they can't go to the attorney for support. And you don't necessarily have to be an attorney to support people through an estate plan. You have to know what you're doing. You can become a certified estate planner. You can act as an LDA like I do. So there are other avenues to getting this taken care of that is cost efficient, affordable, supported by a knowledgeable party or business that knows what they're doing and knows how to take care of and protect their clients from chaos.
So there's lack of awareness. We'll talk about this in the future, but there's certainly the lack of awareness thing and the lack of people spreading the message is kind of a sort of a pretty common theme in this conversation. And then this kind of fear factor around dealing with death, but obviously, maybe the cost of preventing this problem, just this kind of lack of awareness and the thought that it comes with lots of lawyers, thought that it comes with lots of time and effort. Um, you know, just almost like it's almost every step of it makes it overwhelming.
Yes, it can be overwhelming, and that's why it's extremely important to pair up with the right team. Again, right? Like, so on our end, you're gonna you're gonna be handheld through the whole process, because if we don't, you're not gonna do it. I have one client right now that's stuck on beneficiaries, and she's been stuck on beneficiaries for 2 months. And I'm like, okay, girl, you're gonna die on me before we get this settled. Like, identify your beneficiaries, or the state will do it for you. So people, if you don't guide them through the process properly and help ensure that the boxes are getting checked through every step, they will stop. Like, I've had people pay me in full and then just shut down completely. So I like to make sure that at the end of the day that this gets done properly. This is a multiple step project, right? So we agree that this is a good fit for our business and for the client. We move forward on the process of invoicing and data collection. There's a lot that goes into this process, and if you don't have the right support, you're just gonna get overwhelmed. So you've got to have proper project management going on, which is where we come in. We make sure that every single step gets checked, and we make sure that we've got your deed, we have your beneficiaries, we know who you want to disinherit, like anything you can think of. We are working through those questions alongside of you. Once we have that data, we're implementing it into the trust plan. We're sending it to you, or to the estate plan. We're sending it to you for final review and approval. We're booking the notary for you. They'll show up at your house or online, whichever you prefer, or whichever is legal in the state you live. We'll send a digital copy to you. We'll store it for you. We'll give you unlimited edits. Like, this is literally went from the most complicated, overwhelming, stressful situation of your life to, whew, all right, I can breathe. And they're going to take all this hard work off of me, right? Like, the hardest part for my clients is just to get us the data. And we work with you through that. And I have people in our team goes through everything step by step. Okay, do I have the deed? Do they have an extra home? Do we need to fund a business to this? We're asking the right questions to make sure that once you get your estate plan, you are ready to go, your trust is funded, and you can move on until it's time to edit something, or if you want to make an amendment, if you want to add beneficiaries, if you've had more grandkids or another kid, those things can be addressed. And that's why we also offer that unlimited edits, because the reality is, every time your life changes, you may need to be examining your estate. Did you get married? Did you get divorced? Did you lose somebody? Do you want to disinherit somebody? Do you have grandkids? Do you want to leave a gift? There are life-changing circumstances that happen to all of us. And when those things happen, not only should you be examining your insurance benefits or your insurance coverage, you also should be taking a look at your estate plan and making sure that it's accurate and up to date.
So pretty straightforward. Once you've made the decision, you said it can happen. You can fix the whole thing within a couple of days. What was the average period of time it takes someone to go from signing up with you and actually getting it all concluded?
Yeah, as long as they're cooperative and we have the data, that's the biggest thing, getting us the data. Once we have the data, we can get the estate plan ready in a day or two. And then from there, the notary has to come in. And if you break these costs down and just the full process, like, I know people that are only offering trust, and they're not funding the trust, not offering notary services, they're not offering those things. So if you find that you can get a trust for $500 or $1,000, that's great. I just want you to ask some specific questions. Are you funding the trust for me? Do I get a medical power or a medical directive, a power of attorney, final wishes. Like, what is included in this trust? Is it literally just a trust and then you just abandon me from there? Or am I getting everything that I need to appropriately and properly protect my family? Are these documents getting executed, or is this my own responsibility? Because the reality is, if we just leave it to the humans to finish the process, it's not going to fix the issue, right? They're just going to get the documents and they're just going to sit there unsigned, and now they're in vain. So we can fix the problem as quickly as you're willing to cooperate with us, but we do put our people, we put our clients on a timeline now so that we've solved that problem. So once you've signed up with us, you have 5 business days to get us what we need, and we're going to be working with you through those 5 business days. We're going to be sending reminders, answering any questions that you have. We have specific estate planning specialists that are waiting to specifically work with you through that full process.